first time in the history of our show, we have a man sit in the love seat.
Our next guest, he's an attorney, right? He's esteemed, world-renowned, does amazing, amazing things. And guess what, y'all? He's my life partner.
I think our relationship is very different than most relationships I've ever had.
At one point, I had given up on love. And him coming back in my life actually opened up the door for me to heal and love again.
I think part of a person's purpose in a relationship is to shift the other party.
We pulled up on purpose. God allowed him to be in the circumstances he was in and me to be in the circumstances I was in, so we could say, Graham, if we join forces, this is what it could be.
I had no idea of these ideas. I had an uncle who was incarcerated for 20 years. My brother had been incarcerated. So I was like, wow, this was a thing that was impacting me and I didn't know it.
The thing about him was he was really going after change. Other folks were going after the money. He was going after purpose and change. And then the change work occurred and it's like, wow.
And basically in New York State at the time, 16 and 17-year-olds were automatically prosecuted as adults for any crime that they committed. And I was hired to create the legislative campaign to change that law in New York State.
This renowned attorney for this big, prestigious, nonprofit organization, and out of nowhere, for him stepping up, advocating, as he advocates for others through the union, he ended up getting fired.
I'm busy loving myself, putting me first. Now that I know I deserve more, I'm busy loving myself, putting me first. Made up my mind, I'm on my grind. My time to shine, you hit my line. I press decline, no time for that. I'm moving forward and right now. You're in my past, I've come too far to turn back now. Not going back, I see that everybody's sleeping on me. They really gotta see it to believe.
Welcome to I Love Me More. This is Tara Wallace.
And this is Dr. Jamilla T. Davis.
Guys, we have been having such an amazing time listening to people's stories on our love seat and just where they've come from and their journey to healing. Hasn't that been amazing?
It's definitely been amazing. And I mean, not just for them, but also for us, because it lets us know, like, there's still room for improvement. You know, everybody out here, you know, they're claiming to be experts on this and experts on that. Only thing that we really are experts on life, right? And it's as you go through life and as you're exposed to more, as you experience more, you learn more. So
Absolutely.
I'm excited to learn from my sisters and also heal.
Sometimes it's interesting, you know, we find out things on the couch in the moment that we don't know we're going to hear, you know, and I don't feel like we always have the entire answer, but it's about giving people a tool, right? Hearing them out and giving them a tool to start their healing journey or to make them conscious that healing is necessary.
That's
and
a fact.
I think that's what I love most, not just on the couch, but also in the community.
That's a fact. I mean, we let our sisters know they are not alone. Just hearing their stories and some of the things that they go through and some of the ways that they feel, it's like, me too, girl.
Yeah.
So it's like when you get with your sisters, you see that your voice is actually heard and that there's not something wrong with you. You know, you don't stand alone in life's obstacles. And I mean, one thing this show could also do for you is make you grateful.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Because sometimes we think we going through something, but baby,
When you
somebody
listen to
else
people's stories
might be going through something just a little bit worse. So it makes you get grateful. It makes you, you know, muster up the strength. And you know, if my sister did it, guess what? I could do it too.
Yeah, it makes you self-check, you know, just so many stories that I've related to, especially when we get on the show and we talk about women with children, you know, some of the most unfathomable things happening. And it makes you really self-check, really assess what's happening with you. And are you doing all the right things? And, you know, they're just things that I don't think I was even conscious of until some women sat on this couch and shared that stuff.
And you know what? Somebody out there is feeling just like you, sis. So I'm grateful for this podcast. I'm grateful for this platform. I'm thankful for the love.
The love seat.
Yes, where folks are being transformed, where they're being healed. And we're not saying it all happens. Like Rome wasn't built in a day, but now the process begins. And speaking of the process, right? I love being more of the 8 steps to breaking free from toxic relationships. Y'all, we not just talking that talk, we living it. We're living it through our book. We're living it through the steps. right? The interactive workbook journal where we can write, because that's the other piece to this, right? It's not just about telling you what to do. It's giving you the tool and the roadmap so you can do it. So it's the wisdom and the knowledge. So I love that.
You can do it at your own pace. You can get your own little community of friends and do it together. That's what I like. It's a book of community, right?
That's right.
And you get 3 of your girlfriends. You guys get together. You start at chapter 1. You do the work at that chapter 1. Get on a Zoom call, FaceTime. You can get up to 4 people now, talk it out. And then you move on to chapter 2. And you can repeat it.
I
find myself repeating steps in the book, going back when I need to. And especially going back in the places where it's difficult for me to face, right? Even in the healing journey, there are some difficult times and there are difficult things that I have to go back to and do those. I guess when I feel no one's watching, I can do that work quietly in the privacy of my bedroom. And I think that's also what it offers.
It's important because admitting your mistakes and your flaws is a big deal. And for a lot of us, that's the hardest thing to do because we don't want to admit we were wrong or admit that there's a problem. So I feel like the book is a private, safe space where folks could really just let it all out with no judgment. So I loved what you were saying about getting your girlfriends together, doing it together. That's dope because that's what we actually do in the community. Guys, if you haven't already, make sure you join BlackWomen'sLivesMatter.com. Our community is a free community where we galvanize, celebrate, educate, inspire, heal. It's just so dope. And it's women from all across the world in that community sharing, pouring out, helping others with advice and information. We have experts coming through. It's such a dope place. So if you haven't already, make sure you join our community, pull up. We have live chats even after the show. We talk to folks. We real people doing real things. And another thing, if you have a story, right? Or you know somebody that you feel like
needs to be on the love seat.
Couch. Baby, pull up, man. This is real stories with real people, and we want to talk to you.
All right, on that note, guys, our next guest is someone you definitely don't want to miss. This is going to be quite an interesting show today, all right?
Baby, I know this next guest real well.
And, I mean, you guys are going to be surprised because we know normally it's going to be a woman that sits on the couch, right? But is today going to be a woman? Is it not going to be a woman? Whatever, you don't want to miss it, so stay tuned.
Stay tuned, y'all. So, some of y'all be looking at us trying to figure out if we really going to be authentic, if we really going to tell the truth. Well, today is a day of truth-telling. Our next guest, he's an attorney, right? He's esteemed, world-renowned, does amazing things. And guess what, y'all? He's my life partner. So he ain't going to be getting down to the nitty-gritty talking about the real deal of what we experience. This definitely is one you don't want to miss. Stay tuned, y'all. Hello, friends. It's your girl, Dr. Jamilla T. Davis, and I have a special announcement. We are finally opening up the Black Women's Lives Matter community. So what does that mean in real time? We can fellowship with you. We have this platform that we're giving to you for absolutely free. And it's a place where you can learn from other Black women just like you. And we're going to be learning real things, speaking to experts about finances, relationships, fashion, makeup, parenting. You name it, we got it in the community. It's a place that we can fellowship and also heal. We're also going to be having therapy in the community. There's a lot of things that we need to talk about to get off our chest, and we're going to do it in a safe place where we can learn from experts about how to maximize our potential and become the best us that we can possibly be. So what does this mean? It's time to click the link in our bio and join today. It is absolutely free. It costs you nothing and it will grow you so much, I promise you. So meet me in the community. You get to actually work with me this year. I'm going to be doing some one-on-ones. I'm going to be doing some group work, and it's all about leveling up. Meet me in the community. I'll see you soon. And y'all already know what it is. It's going down.
Welcome back to I Love Me More, y'all. And today we have a very special guest. For the first time in the history of our show, we have a man sit in the love seat.
I'm excited to be here.
Baby, is you ready for some love?
I hope so.
Yo, this is Mr. Angelo Pinto. Angelo, you're the first male to sit in this seat. Are you nervous?
No,
You feel like it's the hot seat?
I don't know. We're going to find out.
Just know that this is our love seat. It is all in the vein of healing. And so whatever happens, it's all for healing.
I hope so. I'd like to hear.
It's all in the name of love,
It's
baby.
all in the name
That's
of
good.
love.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, no, I'm just giving you a hard time because you are the first man to sit in this seat. And not just the first man to sit in the seat, but you have a very personal relationship with our host.
This is true.
So, you know, I guess we're gonna start from the beginning, like we do with all of our guests. Where are you from? And let's talk about your childhood.
I'm from New York. So most of my family, no, both sides of my family are from Queens. So my father grew up in Flushing. His family, he was a first generation. So they came to the United States from Colombia when he was very little. He was like 3 years old. And my mother's family's from South Carolina, but they grew up in Queens too. They grew up in like the southeast Queens, which is like Springfield Gardens, Cambria Heights, all those areas. So my father and mother actually met on the 7 train in Queens. So like it's a Queens love story. So they met on the 7 train and they were young. They were like 19 and they got married after being together for like 6 months. And shortly thereafter, they had my older brother and they moved into my great grandmother's home in Hollis, Queens. And then maybe 11 months after that, they had me. So we started in Queens, but shortly after, my parents, embarked on out on their own, and they moved to Long Island. First, they moved to Hempstead, Long Island, and then they moved to Elmont, which is very close to Cambria Heights. Just like once you step outside of Queens, it's the first neighborhood in Long Island, and it was literally about 15 blocks from my grandmother. So that's where I grew up, and I kind of spent a lot of time between my parents' house and my grandparents, and also my father's parents' house in Flushing, Queens. So that was kind of the childhood world
like
that
you
I
and your
grew up
brother?
in. No, so my parents then had 2 more children.
Okay.
So I had a younger brother who's like 3 years after me, and then a sister who's the youngest, who was like probably 6 years after me. And they had all their kids before they were 25.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you grew up in this just well-rounded, you get to go to grandma's house, spend time at home.
Yes.
And, that wisdom from grandparents.
Certainly.
Your parents right there with your siblings.
And actually, when we first moved to Hempstead, my mother bought a house with her sister.
Okay.
And my aunt was blind. And she had like a rare form of cancer. So she didn't think she could have kids. So my brother, when he was born, he was almost premature, but not quite. So he was very sick when he was little. And then I came right after that.
Okay.
But they spent a lot of time in the hospital. So I spent a lot of time with my aunt, who was blind.
Okay.
And because she didn't think she could have kids, she kind of treated me like her son.
Okay.
And she didn't, when my mother would come and say, okay, let me get Angelo back, she'd be like, no, let him stay, because she didn't think she could have kids. So growing up, I had like many moms. It was like my mom, my aunt, my grandmother. So it was a lot of love in the family. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go. Can we get to... there's so many things that I relate to in this story. I was also, between my mom and dad, I was the only girl.
Oh, wow.
I had 2 brothers older than with my mom and my dad, 2 brothers older, and then 1 brother younger. So I was the only girl for a very long time. And I also grew up, my grandmother was blind, and so was her twin sister.
Wow.
So I grew up
thinking
that was normal. Like my grandmother was an English teacher, very self-sufficient. So I understand that I learned to be a caretaker very early.
Yeah.
So I think that
I was kind of a naive kid because I didn't realize my aunt was blind.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because she functioned very well. And I didn't know until I was probably like 11.
Oh, wow.
I was like, wow, my aunt is blind. So I couldn't tell. She was very sharp. Right. She could move around and function. And I never realized that she had that kind of disability. It didn't occur to me. But I think for me as a kid, and I had an older brother, and then I have a lot of uncles. On both sides, I have 4 uncles. So for a while, I was the youngest boy, and then my little brother came behind me. So it was always like, I say I was a naive kid because I had so many people. I was like a kid. It was like, in this world where you had so many people kind of protecting you and
Right.
shielding you that you're not even noticing some of the things that are happening around you. So
You know what's interesting? You want to tell her about, we see Angelo as this such a wise person now doing so many amazing things. Would you want to share with her about your learning disability growing up?
Well, so when I started school, and I think this was kind of, I don't know how to best classify it. Well, actually, this is how to best classify it. So people say I'm like an air element. Like if I had an element as my personality, it's air. And most people, unless you really know me, you won't be able to notice it. So I think I was kind of a person and a child who was kind of floating through life. So when I got to school, they said that I had a learning disability. So what that meant was, how some people, when you're in school and you have a disability, they'll put you in a class with students who they say, these students have a disability or learning challenges. They sent me to a whole nother school.
Okay.
Because they said he has severe learning issues. But my mother, because, as a child, she was teaching
Are
us.
you feeling this? Are you feeling like you're not keeping up with your peers? Are you feeling like you're not understanding?
I had no clue.
Okay.
I didn't even know what was going on.
Okay.
Like, I knew I was getting on a bus during school to go someplace, but I was just like, this is what people are telling me to do. I'm just doing it. But I remember when I look back on it, there was I didn't understand what school was, if that makes sense. Like I knew what my parents were bringing me to a place, but I didn't know I was supposed to do anything there particularly. So I was just kind of there as a kid.
Do you feel that it's because you felt like so much protection and kids were just kind of allowed to be kids? Maybe there's no pressure. I mean, because I remember growing up and when we didn't do well, it came with repercussions, right? Like, we would be spanked, we would be disciplined.
I didn't even know I wasn't doing well.
Okay.
I didn't know I wasn't doing well. It wasn't until years later that I reflected upon it. I was like, oh, wow, all the stuff was going on. So I didn't know I wasn't doing well. But during that time, one of the things that happened was my mother got me a tutor.
Okay.
Maybe when I was like in the 2nd grade, she got me a tutor who was a woman I went to one school in Hempstead and then they moved to Elmont and I went to a Catholic school. So it was a teacher who was my teacher at Catholic school became my tutor. And I used to go to her house and she really helped me understand school. She was like, you got to go here and do this. And then she was teaching me. And it was kind of like, I guess, an awakening for me as a child, what I was supposed to do. And then that was it.
Okay. And how were you? How old were you?
I was like approaching the 3rd grade.
Okay.
So
we start Catholic school.
Yeah.
And that pretty much takes you on through high school where there's an understanding now. And how are you kind of performing in high school?
I became a great student. After that tutor, I enjoyed learning and I enjoyed school too. I liked it a lot. So I had always been a great student.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the point of the matter is you take a kid who is written off, he has a disability, and he goes from going to the special kid school, right, to graduating to the top of his class at
Clark Atlanta University. That's where I went to undergrad.
Okay.
And it's interesting. Wow. I think it was because of my mom or my family because I didn't know. Like I never felt like I was underperforming, if that makes sense. Okay. So, and then she got me a tutor. So I think she was really the first person I saw who was a very strong advocate.
Okay.
And she kind of is that person because, like I said, her sister was blind. So she had to advocate for her. And her older brother, my mother's number 3, her older brother was incarcerated, like from the time I was born for like 20 plus years. So, and then she has 3 brothers under her. So she was like a mom too. So I think she was like an advocate and she was kind of the first example of an advocate. So I didn't really feel what I was experiencing at the time because of her.
So you go to Clark in Atlanta and then you move back to New York.
Actually, I went to Norfolk State first in Virginia, and then I transferred because I was trying to get to Atlanta. So I transferred after my first year to go to Clark.
Okay. Okay. And this time, are you dating? Are you, life is kind of smooth? Is there any, I would say, around college, and I remember experiencing like my first heartbreak, right? And I was like, why did I not know that all of these things, this expectation that was happening only happened I understood it at the first heartbreak. Like somebody should have prepared me for that. So I would say with your childhood and you have this very well-rounded, you have advocates, you have all these people. I guess where's the first, that first moment of something happening that goes against what you're raised and you're like, what was that?
Well, I mean, there were certainly challenges in my childhood.
Uh-huh.
So my mother and father, probably around the time I'm like 10 or 11, the relationship becomes very challenging.
Okay.
So they were probably together, I guess, 10, 12 years now. So they're probably around 30. And I don't know if the relationship was like that before then, or I just noticed at that time, by the time I was like 11, 12. But it became a very challenging relationship. And my father, and I didn't think about it until after even I was older, it was certainly a household where there was domestic violence. My father he wasn't really physically abusive, but he was certainly verbally abusive and in many ways like unhinged. And he kind of gradually became that way because he wasn't like that when I was a little child, but almost around the time I became a teenager, he certainly became that way.
I always tell people the only father that I identify with on TV was James Evans.
Mm.
And that always brought like that level of fear from parents to,
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you felt at that time? Or?
No, it was much more, it was unstable.
Okay.
He had something going on. I learned later on that he had like anxiety attacks and all these other issues, but it caused him to be, I think, destructive in his household.
Okay.
Yeah, caused him to be very destructive. And it caused a lot of challenges in the family during that time. So I think during that time for me, I knew something was wrong.
Okay.
And I knew, but also what happens, I think when you're in those environments is it becomes normalized.
Okay.
Because you're a kid and whatever you see is your reality. So I think it became normalized, but I didn't like to be around it.
And I feel like, in many ways, that's his first encounter with trauma. And I think you can talk about being a kid, having a paper route from the time you was how old?
I was probably 12, 13, around the same time.
12 or 13, but he tells me the story about his dad, who he would never allow to pay for anything for him as a kid. You want to tell him a little bit about that?
So, I think, I'm not sure exactly what prompted it, but I'm a person, I think even as a child, I didn't really like conflict. So I didn't want to be in conflict. And my father at this time became a person who caused conflict. And it could be over the littlest things, like, I can't find my keys. The lights, like anything is this huge conflict. So for me, I was kind of, let me stay away from this guy. My older brother was not like that. He was like, so it was like, they were very similar personalities and they had the same name. So it was like, and I was like, I'm staying away from this. So one of the ways me and my brother used to go to work together, my father would pick us up sometimes and he would take us to go get something to eat, like, McDonald's or something. But he used it as a way to like, I felt like cause conflict and drama. So by the time I was like 13, I was like, remember we were going to McDonald's after work and I was like, I don't want anything. And from that point, I was just like, I don't want him to get me anything because it was a way for me to create distance in the relationship. So there would be no conflict with me. Okay. There was no way for us to have an issue. So, yeah.
So I feel
that kind
like
of brings me. I was about to say, just really quickly, like, how does someone who tries to avoid conflict get into advocacy work? Because that's some level of conflict, right?
It's a lot of conflict. You know what I think, to your point, when I reflect on my life, or not even my life, but my family and my upbringing, when I look at it, it's almost if a person who was prepared to be an advocate.
Okay.
Because my mother was kind of this example of a lay advocate because she had kids, she had younger brothers, she had a sister who was sick, a brother who was incarcerated. So she played this kind of lay advocate role. And then I was around people like my aunt who was blind. So I think I naturally had an inclination to care for people who may have had challenges. And people who had challenges, my little brother had a learning disability, were very close to me. And because the family was so tight, it was always like, look after whoever. Right. That's just what you do. So it wasn't even, I didn't realize that those are really the seeds of advocacy. Okay. It's really caring for people. That's really people who become advocates, people who care enough to do something to help another. And that's just kind of how my family was. And I think it just stuck. And I think as I progressed, it manifested in different ways. But ultimately, it was like, I'm a person who cares about people, even though I don't like conflict. So in many ways, I will engage in conflict to address a situation. Okay. But aside from that, I don't. But the other thing that I learned over time was that one of the ways you can engage conflict is not in a way that causes more conflict. You can engage in conflict in a way that mediates, in a way that actually creates resolution where peace comes now. Okay. And I think that's where I like to operate most, if possible.
I don't know about that.
Before we get,
that's what I said. That's why I like to operate. Sometimes I don't, but that's why I like to operate. What?
I was going to ask you one question about your dad before we got into the juice, and that is, because there is that energy of conflict, or and how do you kind of resolve that and make peace with it, or do we just kind of accept who our parents are, or do you have that moment where you sit down with your dad and say, because of these things, there were things that I just denied myself to avoid conflict. How do you as a man make peace with that, or do you just say that's just who he was? I now am who I am, and you leave it alone? What is that?
I think you do have to create resolution with things in life. And because things have impact. Right. My brother, ultimately, at one point, my brother was incarcerated because of something that happened in my household with my father. A fight where I was involved. And so he ended up being incarcerated when he was 16. And because of the laws in New York State, he was incarcerated as an adult. And the household already changed his life the way my brother was, and me too. But it really, being incarcerated at that age, even if it's for a moment, that really shifted his life. And even at the time, I didn't know it. It wasn't until I became an advocate and understand the criminal justice system that I learned what actually transpired. And I was like, oh my gosh. Okay. I'm saying all that to say, I think that it's healthy to acknowledge hurt and to acknowledge people's faults and how it's impacted you. There's a definition of forgiveness I like to use is one's ability to accept one's own failings, accept the failings of others, and seek healing when those failings produce hurt. So for me, at some point, I had to go through a process of forgiveness for myself because I didn't want that to be my story, or at least the end of it. It was something that transpired that, of course, impacted me and shaped me.
So what did you do at that point? So how did advocacy begin for you?
I think when I was younger, when I was a teenager, I started a gang. And I think advocacy started there. It was because there were friends of mine who may have had challenges or issues, but were really trying to build community. I don't think it always looks like that to people, but to me, when I think back on it, it was really the first moment where I embarked upon building something to create community for people. Okay. And of course, things happen in the course of it that aren't always great, but
you feel like you created community with the gang?
Of course. And what ended up happening, because my brother was a tough guy, right? My older brother was a tough guy in the neighborhood, and people knew he was a tough guy. So, but I wasn't the tough guy. I wasn't necessarily that person. So what would happen is there were people who would come to me because I was friends with everybody. I was one of those people. So there was people who would come to me and be like, yo, I'm going to fight, or someone wants to do something to me. Can you come and bring your people? And I'd be like, all right, we're going to come. So in many ways, we mediated situations. Or we'd be like, yeah, I got to
It
fight.
wasn't gang in the typical sense.
No.
Like we just hear. It's like
No,
it's
I
like
think
a
it
group
was
of,
gang in the
So
I guess the
Man,
question was,
she wasn't there. She wasn't there.
how do we go from gang, but not maybe your typical gang, but your local gang?
Sure.
From my understanding, they definitely terrorized people, and there was some big stuff that happened. But how I guess the question becomes, how do you go from that to a lawyer? Because that's a big jump in a world of potentially being on one side of the fence, but then now you get to.
I was always a great student. I was just always a great student. But in addition to being a great student, my older brother, uncles, and even I was always around older guys. They all really shielded me. I never got in trouble in school. I was never suspended. My brother was kicked out of multiple. He got kicked out of the school you go to after you get kicked out of school.
Wow.
So I never had those issues. And some of it was because I was protected by those individuals. And I think that allowed me, and because I was a good student, that allowed me to go to college. And I just flourished there because I was already a good student. And then from there, I started to make shifts. But I think even when I was in high school, I started to make shifts because I was a lover of knowledge. So I always wanted to learn. So I had this desire to learn and explore the world. And I think that helped push me out into another trajectory as well.
So why a lawyer? You could have been a lot of things. Why that?
I always used to say that as a kid, like, I want to be a lawyer. And then I remember reading the autobiography of Malcolm X, and there's a part where he's a grade school child and he's in the classroom, and the teacher's like, I think he wins class president. They say, Malcolm, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he says, I want to be a lawyer. They say, Malcolm, you're Black. You're good with your hands. Think of something realistic. And I think I always thought about, and Malcolm X becomes a great leader. He never becomes a lawyer. But I always thought about, what would Malcolm have been like if he had become an attorney?
So that was your leading
that was something
force
that pushed me in that direction.
through.
Eventually, when I got to my first year of undergrad, there was a conference that happened around incarceration. And it was the first time I learned about mass incarceration and the prison industrial complex. And I was like, wow, I had no idea of these ideas. But I had an uncle who was incarcerated for 20 years. My brother had been incarcerated. I was like, wow, this was a thing that was impacting me and I didn't know it. And I think that pushed me even further into advocacy. And one of the my uncle was incarcerated for 20 years, so I didn't really know him growing up. But there was always this box in my grandmother's room, living room, where they were putting things in the box because they were always shipping him stuff. And I didn't, that was always a thing. But he used to always send boxes home.
Okay.
And when I was growing up in the basement, there was boxes and boxes that my uncle had been sending. And I remember I asked one of my uncles, I was like, yo, what are in those boxes? He was like, I don't know, go look. So I went and opened the box and it was books.
Oh, wow.
And I started to read the books that he was sending home from, I guess, his library in prison. And it was books around vegetarianism and I became a vegetarian. So the books really opened up a world for me too, and it were his books.
So were you, where did you go to law school?
I went to CUNY Law School. So I came back to New York after undergrad, and it's in Queens. It was in Flushing, but now it's in Long Island City.
Okay, so you finished law school.
Finished law school. I actually teach legal research on Rikers Island. So I was working, Rikers Island has about 19 prisons.
Okay.
Each prison has a law library. So I was going to different law libraries, teaching legal research and helping men advocate for themselves. And at the same time, I was working actually for a medical malpractice law firm. That was kind of my first job. My concentration in law school was health law. So I worked for a medical malpractice law firm. And then actually with the shift comes because I didn't like that. And I ended up getting a job for organization. The first nonprofit I worked for called the Arthur Ashe Institute for Urban Health. And it was merging public health with formerly incarcerated individuals. So it was looking at the public health impact of formerly incarcerated individuals when they returned to the community, because some of them were contracting tuberculosis, hepatitis C, even HIV, AIDS, mental health issues. And because reentry rates are so high, because so many people are incarcerated from certain communities, it causes a public health epidemic. So that was kind of my first entry point into real advocacy, professional advocacy.
And what does that look like when you enter advocacy? You know, how do you go from like in school or a job or knowing what's right and wrong or understanding what's happening in the world to putting this on TV to making that voice loud and in the public space?
So I went to CUNY Law School is the #1 public interest law school in the country. So they are supposed to produce attorneys who they call it do work in public need, right? So these are not your traditional attorneys who work in the corporate environment, but these are attorneys who are supposed to go out into the world and change it and make it better. That's what they produce. So it doesn't always happen. But the great thing about it was that was the environment that I was cultivated in. And that's why I picked that law school. I was like, oh, this is aligned. I want to learn these things. So in law school, you're taught to advocate to some degree, right? But I also learned about nonprofit organizations. I hadn't known about that. So I knew there was these organizations that people who wanted to create change went and worked for. So my thing was like, that's where I'm going to go work.
So what was your first change? Like, what was the first thing that you actually did as an attorney that had a major impact?
Well, I think I would say there's a big change I did, but before that, it was really the Arthur Ashe Institute. They taught me how to do community work. And I was working in barbershops and beauty salons with the community to create legislative priorities and actually to build curriculum in what they call non-traditional venues. So you would train barbers to train men and train stylists to train women because they often were talking to them in their chair and they had a captive audience to create better health outcomes. So it was the first time I really engaged the community in a deep way. But after that, I got a job doing legislative advocacy. Where I worked for an organization that was trying to change a law in New York State. It was called the Raise the Age campaign. And basically in New York State at the time, 16 and 17-year-olds were automatically prosecuted as adults for any crime that they committed. And I was hired to create the legislative campaign to change that law in New York State, which I did. And that's where I learned that my brother had been prosecuted as an adult. Because New York State, if you're 16 at the time, you were automatically prosecuted as an adult. In my first week there, I was reading all these stories of young people who were prosecuted as adults. And I was like, wow, this is what happened to my brother. It occurred to me in that moment, like, wow. And in that moment, I also learned how nonprofits are limited. I learned that advocacy isn't everything and it's challenging. And that's when I got with people who were just what people call activists. Individuals who weren't necessarily professional advocates, but they were just activists in the street trying to create change. So I was doing that simultaneously. I was like in this professional advocacy world as an attorney, and I was working with people who were activists in the streets who were just doing anything they could to create change.
And it is in that work that you met Jamila.
Some years later.
So he basically, long story short, he becomes this renowned attorney that's known all throughout the world for the work that he does with civil rights and so forth and so on. One of the things for me that I'm just noticing in the story, you know someone, but then you're able to put the points together. He quickly became an attorney that had esteem and was affluent. And some people will be attorneys forever and don't have that. But the thing about him was he was really going after change. He was really got with the activists and started doing something that other folks were going after the money. He was going after purpose and change. And then the change work occurred and it's like, wow. So he and I met during the height of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, it was, I guess, one of the largest movements of our time, right? Black movements of our time. And I had this summer program that I was doing with my kids. And I wanted them to know about social justice. So I reached out to this organization called Until Freedom, which he happened to be a co-founder of. I already knew Mike Solomon and I already knew, Tamika Mallory and Linda, but I didn't really know Angelo. So they was like, oh, we got the perfect person who can help us teach. Angelo began to teach the kids. And I saw quickly how the kids and the students' eyes lit up from the work that he was doing with them. And I was like, wow, this guy's dope,
Yeah, that's how we met.
Okay, wait.
Just like that.
You met him. You see what he's doing. Are you even thinking like
absolutely
this
not.
is just
So Angelo, we looked at him to be like upstanding citizen. I myself, I've told you guys that wasn't necessarily what I was attracted to. I later learned, right, that upstanding citizen had some different things too when he was growing up. So his life was different. I just respected him.
Okay.
So he was someone I respected. I admired the work that he was doing. And that's as far as it went. So it's like, well, you went, you helped the kids, you don't.
So she's like, oh, this is a great person. He's doing this, but you what are you thinking in your head?
She's a great person too.
No. No.
That was it.
It was that.
That was it.
No, I want to get
Seriously,
to
that's what
where
happened.
does it go from professionalism to googly eyes?
What happened?
That's what I want to know.
What happened was we became friends.
Okay.
That's what happened. So I knew Jamila through these other folks.
Okay.
And then we were doing this work. So it was just really like a person who I did work with. It wasn't anything deep, And so at one point, there were folks who told me that I should run for office in New York City. So some people told me, hey, you need to run for office. All the activism stuff was happening. This is a perfect time. You're an attorney, blah, 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 run for office.
And they needed him because as an activist, him being an attorney put him in position to be able to do things that the regular activists couldn't do.
So I started calling people to ask them their perspective. What do you think? Do you think I should do this? How could you help? Boom, 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 boom. She was one of the people I called. So
if you don't want to be motivated, do not call her. If you do not want to be motivated, that's
and I don't think I even knew her like that.
Right.
I didn't even
We
know.
didn't know each other.
Yeah,
Right.
I didn't know that she was like that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I was just calling her because we were already doing work. So I was like, let me see what Jamila thinks about this.
Okay.
So I called her. We talked about it. And then from there, we started to talk every day.
Oh, wow.
And then we really became
friends. And then I became
friends.
his pseudo campaign manager because he didn't have a campaign manager.
Right.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
yo,
That's
you
what
can do
happened.
this.
Right.
That's what happened.
And I saw him. Because I saw him before, but I saw him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So his potential is so great. He's so dope. He's this guy that has this big thing. And it's like, you know how usually people, even sitting on the couch, first thing people are coming to get right into is like, yo, I'm ill. This is what I do. He's so humble. It's like oftentimes you don't get to see him. So in his conversations, they're just very casual and, bubbly and warm, but you don't get to see him. So as I spoke to him, I got to the chase. I'm like, yo, this dude is dope.
Okay.
And I started telling him, I was like, yo, you know how dope you are? This is dope, And I started seeing where we could potentially go with the campaign. So I called folks in. We was on a lot. Like, let's go. And that's how it started. And I saw him. And when I saw him, baby, I saw him.
So when she saw you, did you feel that?
I think in the moment I saw that person who had a very powerful skill set.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? I was like, because I didn't know Jamila either. And then the campaign, at least the beginning of it.
But when does it change? Like you see this woman supporting you, right?
I think we became very close friends.
But okay, but where did we go from close friends to now you see that this woman could be potentially more than just a close friend?
I think in the course of building a friendship.
Okay.
Because at that time, I also, like months before that, it was like at the beginning of the new year, this was happening. And I had stopped dealing and dating anybody at that time. I was like, I just want to focus on me and spend some time for myself. So I wasn't thinking about that at all. I was like, that's the furthest thing from my mind. But once we kind of connected, I liked the idea of having a friend like that.
Okay.
So I think our friendship started to grow very fast. And we talked a lot, and it was something that I enjoyed and I liked. And I think in the course of that friendship, that's when things
it was a deep friendship because we talked about spirituality. I didn't realize.
Yeah.
So this
It's
guy's
true.
so versed in
It's
knowledge
true.
that he knows about religion, he knows about this and that. So we had these conversations that would go on for hours about life experiences. And I really think his daughter is probably the one who cemented the deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he had a 9-year-old daughter at the time. And it's so crazy because when I left and went to federal prison, my daughter was 9 years old too. So when I met him and I met his daughter, it was like I gained back my daughter that I had lost through my incarceration. And his daughter came to the house, and I'll never forget, this is when my French bulldog was alive, because all I had was my Frenchie at the time, which was Legend. And his daughter came to our house the first time. And tell him what she said to you.
We wasn't even going to come because we were at the Slime Museum. And because we hadn't even really been in each other's physical presence because it's COVID too.
Okay.
So I was like, all right, let's go. We came. My daughter loved the dog. She loved Legend. And she was like, I want to stay here for 21 days. And then I was like,
I never had heard a kid say anything like that. It
wanna
was like,
stay here for
what?
21 days.
So
Okay.
she was comfortable
Yes.
in the space.
Okay.
And she told her dad she wanted to be there. And I think that was a sound off for him. Like,
yeah, it was.
Wow.
Because for me, I'm not a person who really needs assistance from folks. But the one place that I do is my daughter.
Okay.
So it was definitely, I think, deepened our friendship even more.
Okay.
Right? Because at this point, we're still friends.
But do you not need assistance because you think you can handle it on your own? You haven't acknowledged that it takes a team and that you do need.
Oh, I know it takes a community, but I'm saying.
Tara, we didn't go back to that trauma from the father. He used to tell the father, I don't need anything.
Lord
from
have
you.
mercy.
Right? So now we're talking about this because, babe, this is some real, because now, y'all, we talked to you about the bluff stuff. You got to understand Angelo, but now we're going to get into the real shit, as I'm going to say. Because at the end of the day, everybody has their things, right? For him, he didn't want conflict. He didn't want nobody throwing nothing up in his face. So he's been this independent man, did it his way, and he figured out. So for the first time, or for one of the first times, he allowed someone to come in and to assist him.
I don't think I was ever adverse to assistance. I believe it takes a community to raise a child. I truly believe that.
But no, not just to raise a child, but for you.
Assistance for him.
For him, like for your life. Because you're not having a partner to be alone. You're finding partners.
Sure.
And you have a partner because you are building something together.
That's true.
So, at this moment, as you're getting to know him, he's gotten to know you. So you already know this woman at this moment is your cheerleader. Your daughter's in a house for 21
I don't think I thought about all those things. I think over time that became apparent. I guess I'm a little aloof in that sense.
Okay.
It was just like, we're friends. It's a great friendship. Come on, friend. You see what I'm saying?
But when is that awakening moment that you can now stop hiding from all these things that are possibly you are afraid of, right? Maybe you're afraid of heartbreak. Maybe you're afraid of all these things that
I don't think I was
bring
afraid
you
of
back
anything.
to whatever you felt that you were.
Well, let's talk about it. If you wasn't afraid of anything, you really, outside of, haven't I been one of your longest relationships?
Sure.
Okay, so there is shit, right? So we gloss on the
I
good
think
stuff.
I was in a moment where I wasn't interested in I wasn't thinking about relationships. So I don't think so.
How many relationships have you been in your life? Like, in regards to women, he was a heartthrob. So he has so many women, ran through women, did a lot with women. Come on, we gonna talk about this shit. If we don't talk about it, baby, we gotta talk about it.
Yeah, because what has happened that made you, first of all, shut down, right, from wanting to date? This is just a question.
No, I don't think I shut down.
You decided to focus on you, and then you met a woman that's going to help you focus on you even more and take that focus to another level. Even though you did not want to date, even though you did not focus on it, at what moment did you focus and realize and see what she saw? After being friends, after we have discovered that, now there's that moment where now you're looking at her and you're saying, I'm feeling something different.
I think, you know how people say, I think our relationship is very different than most relationships I've ever had. Probably, I've never had a relationship like that. So,
and I haven't had a relationship like that.
But I think also it's because you two are so busy constantly doing for other people and the community.
Sure.
Now, how does this come together where you guys are doing for each other
immediately?
A relationship.
So we don't go from Love says she wants to be there. He's in the middle of COVID, right? He had moved back home from Washington, D.C., right? There's so much to the story because he was working as this renowned attorney for this big, prestigious nonprofit organization, and out of nowhere, for him stepping up, advocating, as he advocates for others through the union, he ended up getting fired from his job. That's the part of the story that you don't know. So he went from to just like that, right? But it was God in the midst of that, right? So he ended up moving back to New York, helping his mom out who needed some help. So he was home with his mom, was helping his daughter, because in many ways he has to step up to help his daughter. And, I saw him and I'm just like, wow. So I'm looking at his potential. I'm looking at the things that he's doing. I don't know what he's seeing, but I know what I'm seeing.
Right.
And I'm like, yo, he could be out.
But I think the same thing happened simultaneously.
Okay.
Because I knew of Jamila, but I didn't know Jamila.
Okay.
So being in that proximity with her and becoming friends, I started to learn who Jamila was. And I said the same thing to her. I was like, oh, You could be whoop, 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 whoop.
Yes.
So yes, that's what
daily
happened.
doing that. I was
Okay.
pouring into
Yeah.
him daily, doing my thing. And then I learned he had a wild back. I'm like, yo, I'm thinking, you know, this guy, very meager, and he's pulling up. And then I'm like, yo, and he got bread too. I'm like, yo, you know what you could do with that money?
Yeah.
You can boop, you can boop, you can pop, you can bam. All right, baby.
I've always been a good saver.
Okay.
So, and I always had a job. So, until I didn't. So I was, it
happens.
It
Hey,
did.
and obviously it needed
did.
to happen. It needed to happen.
You know
In the
what?
moment, it's not.
But
always
the crazy part is it happened, and that was God's way of setting him up now.
Yeah, it was.
Co-founder
It was.
of one of
Yes.
now the most renowned in this particular, time, civil rights organizations in the country,
But this
right?
is why I say sometimes we have to be pushed off the track to
Of course.
push
So
off
our
whatever track
story,
we
Tara,
on.
is a
Yeah.
story of purpose, right?
Yeah.
We got together. I didn't say, oh my God, so it wasn't like your typical lust story. It wasn't like, oh, I see him, he's handsome. You see my baby, good, but it wasn't like, but we pulled up on purpose, right?
Right.
And I feel like God allowed him to be in the circumstances he was in and me to be in the circumstances I was in. So we could say, bam, if we join forces, this is what it could be. And that's literally what we did.
Yeah.
In our house, we put up a board. We said, this is what we was going to do. We said we was going to buy a house. I was like, yo, baby, I want to do something different from over here. We're going to get a couple of cars. We're going to do this. We're going to set up this business. We're going to set up that business. And every single thing we put down on that board, when we came together and we focused on it, we got it done.
And it
So
happened
much
kind of
so-
fast.
Oh wow.
So much energy.
Are you shocked? Did it knock you off your feet a little bit?
I didn't think that would happen. Certainly not. I wasn't expecting that, but it happened. I mean, I think now we're coming up on 3 years. So all that transpired before then.
Correct.
Okay.
Like,
Now we at 3 and it's so crazy. But the bottom line is it was a lot. Because what I didn't realize, we had mutual friends that he loved and I loved. And
Right.
I thought like, yo, they fund me. This is my friend. Like some of these people was just like, folks, I would pretty much, again, like how I go with friendship, die for. The crazier part to it is when they seen us get together, we didn't get the cosign. And I started feeling like, okay, damn. You know what I'm saying? They wanted him not to mess with me. She been locked up.
I don't think that's what happened. This lady, wow. I don't think that's what happened. I think
about the shit.
I think
People didn't want us to.
no, that's not true.
So what
I
they
think
said-
what
they said,
no,
they
no one
for
said
you to
that.
Be with me?
I think what happened was people were warning me, not in that sense like this is danger, but people were saying, hey, this is real stuff going on. This woman was incarcerated for 10 years. You should think about this. I think that's what happened. I don't think people were like, nah.
So here goes the
I
thing,
think,
you
you
should
know what I'm
think
saying?
about it. But these is the same people who see my work ethic, who
Yes.
see what
I think
give
for
them,
her, it
who
hurt her
see
that
how,
happened.
regardless of what I've been
But
through in my
I think
story, I'm a
again,
good
but
person.
this goes back to some of
wait
the
a second.
episodes.
Not only am I a good person,
Yeah.
now when you look at it, now we could go to the receipts and the facts, right? Regardless of where I came from in my situation, look at what me being in his life has been able to do for this.
But my,
So you was wrong.
But my thing is,
You was wrong.
oh Lord, he like, what?
Bullshit.
No, oh, man,
Evan, they
that's
said,
not what
"You
happened.
wrong,
That's
and
not-
You need 8 steps. You need to get yourself 8 steps, and you need to get
The talk.
get your own team to put in it and mind your business.
What? To me, this is the thing. I don't think.
And it's crazy because
I don't think
it's
that's
still
what happened,
under your
though.
So what happened there?
But I mean, that can be offensive. Like if you have friends,
I
you guys
think
have mutual
certainly
friends.
you could get hurt by that.
That's offensive, especially
Why meet
but
someone
especially
who I think
these
is
are
my
people.
soulmate?
Yes.
We come together. It ain't sexual. It's not lusty. It's not all these things. It's like, this is my friend. I love my friend. Right?
Yes.
And we're together every day, and we're building and we're talking about changing lives and we're helping people and we're coming out and we're supporting one another. You understand what I'm saying? But I'm not good enough for him.
I don't think
now,
that's what happened.
Whoa. This goes back. Now you're triggering all the things as a little girl that I'm not good enough, right? So I'm good enough to do whatever for you,
Yes.
be for whatever, but I'm not good enough to be with your trusted friend who you feel like is the person.
So I think she was triggered by. I don't think people were saying that, but I think that. I think a person. I think a person.
Part of the
I
episode where I'm
think.
gonna take my shoes off because Angelo, Now we
Ma'am,
gonna get to it,
ma'am, but hold on,
You
wait,
got
ma'am,
mercy,
listen.
And maybe I'm a heal while you healing over
Listen to
here.
this, though.
But the fact of the matter is, people did not want us to be together. They did not feel that we were a proper fit. And they were waiting for our relationship to break.
That's not true.
No?
Ma'am, the thing about it is, I think people are entitled to their perspective. So you could have that perspective, but from another perspective.
But the perspective obviously did not matter because we are here.
Sure. But it does, though, because you still feel away.
Yeah, I do.
But you got to let it go.
But I'm still healing. So we're here on the show talking about
what's the step that has to help this one?
Well, I mean,
Where's the step?
But no, I think
because, ma'am, you have to let it go.
But I know
how much?
Because you or no one else gets to tell me when to let it go.
So how much time you think?
So the whole point of the situation is
I can't.
But maybe,
in my healing
I just ask you, do you think some of her frustration is happening because you're in denial of how it has made her feel? Are you just
We
not
talked about it a
acknowledging
lot,
that
Tara.
hurt
We
her?
talked about it a lot.
So you have acknowledged, like, I understand that this hurt you. It was wrong.
Sure.
It does not matter because now we are here.
The thing I said, I think for me, the type of person I am is the proof is in the pudding.
Okay.
Regardless of what people said, I didn't make that stop the relationship.
Yes.
I heard them, I listened, and we did what we did.
Okay.
So to me, it's of no consequence at some point. It's, well, let's live our life.
Yes.
I'm not worried about that. And for me, people...
And I respect that about him.
Yes. So people share their perspective.
My frustration isn't on my man because he stayed with me.
Your frustration is these are the people that you wrote for. You were good enough to do all of these things.
He rode with me even when people gave him information that you was my friend. So you privileged to have information about me that... But why you frustrated with him with the hopes that you're going to give him this so that he leaves me alone?
I don't think that's true.
He stays.
But you know, the thing is about it, I don't think a person should be frustrated about that.
Why? Because I would never do that.
Let me tell you why. Because I think what's for you is for you in life. And no one can stop that.
Okay.
But if you allow yourself to be mad about somebody attempting...
It's just about golly. And even for my viewers, there's some of them that's watching out, like they could relate. To be, and so we go back to childhood traumas and we talk about triggers, right? That was a trigger for me because it really made me it tapped into my insecurities, right? To say, damn, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I don't deserve this position, right? And it's just not good.
Listen to this.
But I think also sometimes, Jamila, and what I hear oftentimes is, and I don't know if you've kind of experienced this, like in high school or these things, that there does come an expiration date with people, and it does not have your expiration date and your move on doesn't have to be angry. It just means that it has come to an end.
Yes.
And maybe because you love a little bit too hard, it's really hard for you to let those people just fall by the wayside.
So, I mean, relationships have distance and I just let it be. Now, when I talk about things, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not like I'm thinking about these people every single day. Of course not. But now we just at the part of the conversation where you're talking about
But you do think about it.
Oh, I do think about it because it's a real evident thing that happened to me. It didn't happen to you.
Let me ask you something. Do you think there's a moment where it comes like, let's let this go? It is. When does that come?
Well, let's ask God.
A God?
Yes, let's ask God about it.
What'd he say?
And we'll see. We'll see.
I mean, because no matter what they said, it was 3 years ago, and we 3 years in and counting. And the change makers are happening.
So let's get to the good stuff. So we come together.
Lord have mercy.
And we start creating change in communities, right? He also helps me to see my potential and where we could take things. I love his mind. So now we're building out these, enormous programs and communities and together collectively through what we create together, which is called Be the Change Makers. We start empowering other people to find their purpose, right? To heal, right? And again, healing is a process. So it takes time. Sure. And we're doing all of these amazing things, right? We got this book coming out, 10 steps is actually Be the Change Makers, 10 steps to discovering your purpose and becoming the change you wish to see. I ended up becoming a community practitioner at Seton Hall University. Through that work that he did with me together, we got, the light of Yale University. And our friend brought us over there and he became the community practitioner. Well, actually,
community activist and resident.
in residence at Yale University.
Okay.
So we did our first lecture together at Yale, which sparked our book because we saw how the students lit up and they like, oh, these are the things that we don't get to talk about. So that's what we do. We utilize our life and our stories to help transform communities, and we do great work. But what I wanted to do on the show, I could act like everything is great and life is perfect, but I didn't really want to do that because the real part is, we go through real things, right? And we heal. We take time to go through different situations, and we grow and evolve.
I think also there's no acknowledgement of how much stress it is on the both of you to be advocates in the field that you're in. Even, what we do right here, the energy that you take in and the stories that you try to heal people from and how that now affects your relationship.
I think I have more balance than Jamila. Like, I'm a type of person, I stop. I'm like, hey, no, that's enough. We'll go relax, go on a trip. Jamila doesn't really do that. She's like,
but this is what he doesn't get, right? I laid down for a decade. I lost a decade.
No, I understand that.
Hold on 1 second. Let me get this peaceful. I lost a decade of my life. So for me, I rested. You know what I'm saying? I sat on that bunk bed in federal prison and I rested. Now it's time to go, Shug. It's time to come on. And then there's things that I know I was created and born to do on this earth. So when I understand that and I understand that the charge that God has over my life, I do rest, but I know this work has purpose and urgency.
But the thing about this, to your point about the advocates, that's why I was bringing it up. A person can, and I think Jamila is good at doing this, they can push themselves to a breaking point. It's like you're exhausted, you're worn out. It's like, ma'am, take a step back. Let's recalibrate. So I think, because Jamila naturally is an entrepreneur
you're
at
wanting
heart.
her to slow down just for her to make sure she is.
I tell her that all the time. And at the same time, though, I say to her, if this is what you want to do, you go for it. If you want to go till the wheels fall off, all right. But caution, this could be dangerous.
I mean, I think he balanced me out, right? Angelo is the quiet storm. And I say quiet storm because, baby, right now, he's a lawyer, he's professional, but he got a little temper on him and he'll pull out. You understand? And you would never think that about Angelo because you think, okay,
big brother comes and shows up.
I'm a nice guy. I'm a nice guy.
Okay, he's a nice guy. But you take him there, he'll pull up and he's not backing down. So and that's, I guess, the fighter in him. So he's fearless when it comes to fighting. So I think that was also one of the things that attracted us.
I think, too, in a relationship, part of I think part of a person's purpose in a relationship is to shift the other party. Not intentionally. Like, I don't care about changing a person per se, because people got to decide that. But I do think when people are brought together, that's part of the assignment. It's like, if you're really supposed to be, you shouldn't leave the same. You should leave better. Something should be transformed in you. And I think that's how it works. So when I see a thing and I'm like, I'm not trying to make you change, but I think this could improve who you are and how you show up in the world. That's where that comes from. You see what I'm saying?
So long story short, because I know as we wrap up, I met the love of my life because he is that, right? Mm-hmm. But now I'm still dealing with past relationships of toxicity. He doesn't have the style or presence of what I'm accustomed to. So now I'm learning something different, which I like, so he's making me evolve. He's making me speed up my healing process, and he's making me trust to love again. Because at one point I had given up on love, and him coming back in my life actually opened up the door for me to heal and love again. However, I still got triggers, right? I still am a person who has dealt with a tremendous amount of trauma. Now, I'm healing and I go through my phases and steps and I know how to cope, but there's still some real live things, we're dealing with that.
I think that, first of all, we learned a lot here. Just as this person, what stands out that I don't want either one of you guys to say anymore. This is no therapy or anything. Mm-hmm. Stop addressing the person as that's not what I thought, because this is where we are and there's already so much love. And I think that negative aspect, when you both speak of the other person, should be taken out of it.
What do you mean?
When you say, well, I didn't know I was going to like her. This is not what I'm used to.
I see what you're saying.
This is not what I'm used to. This is not the package. because it takes me away from so much love and
Yeah, that's
all
good.
the things that you guys have done, because nobody's the package until they're the package,
That's
right?
good.
And this is their package. This is the package you were supposed to have. This is what your package
Mhm.
looks like, and it's where it's supposed to be.
That's
And
good.
you too.
Well, Tara, why you giving out advice? I don't have no ring on my finger, baby. This ring on my baby.
Tara
Okay.
said the package that you have is the package you're supposed to get, right, Tara?
What the package? What are you
She
talking
said the package you got, the one you're supposed to get.
Baby, you know to stop playing with.
I'm just saying.
Tara,
Tara, you said that.
This is what we want you to do.
Verdict is still out because he has also, I believe, some commitment issues, right? This is what I believe, right?
Right.
And we didn't get all into it, but as we go, you guys have now met Angelo. We will share a little bit more as we go. I'm 3 years in, okay? Baby, I committed. We done did things. We done bought homes and cars and businesses and all the things that married people have not done together.
Right.
Yet I still, if you like, put a ring on it.
But I you know,
In the eyes of God.
in the,
In the eyes of the Lord.
well,
No.
listen, what I want to say right now is that it takes so much vulnerability and courage at the same time to sit on this couch and talk about things that you guys don't see in a relationship. And I really want to thank both of you guys for being so vulnerable in
Thank
this
you.
space, because like you said, it's so easy to sit here and act like you have it all together.
No, we don't.
And,
No.
and it's not. And people need to see this because
we
they
got
need
love.
to know that, yeah,
That him should
this
go-
package,
baby, this
package right here.
I got you about him now.
Yes.
shit.
No, you heard.
Loves him. Okay.
Yes, I love that.
But as we go, we grow. And as we learn, we love together. But what I wanted to share with you, Tara, I'm really proud of this project right here.
Oh, this
Look at
is
that.
amazing.
You want to tell them about this, babe?
So this is our book. This is our first book. Be the Change Makers, 10 Steps to Discovering Your Purpose and Becoming the Change You Wish to See in the World. And this book birthed out of the work we did together. I mean, Jamila, as I'm sure most people know, is like a remarkable entrepreneur.
I'm
Like,
talking
oh
about
my
incredible.
God.
Incredible.
I never met somebody who was such a business person. And in a very short period of time, it's like they say, if you're with one rich person, you might be the second. Being around her made me a business person. I wasn't really a business person. And we started
But baby,
so
business
many
person now.
businesses together.
And you
And
know,
this is
some
one of
married
them, man.
people don't even have books together. Y'all see this right here. Y'all see that right here. She got something most married people
Look
don't
at that.
Most married people don't even have 20 years in and no books. No 10-step, nothing.
Look, there's a ring in the book.
It's
Look, there's a ring in the
coming.
book.
It's coming. It's
It's a
designed
ring.
your rings.
Stop playing with me.
There's a ring there.
Stop playing.
Angela,
It's a ring on the cover of the book.
Don't. I go home. I go home to in my guild.
You don't see that? Look,
I
do
go
you
home to my
see the
guild.
ring?
Guys, please make sure and so we're gonna get this at thechangemakers.com. We can order this book.
Yes, they can. And they can also get it on Amazon. But guys, I'm going to share this work because this work is important.
And it's gonna be in our community as well.
Definitely. Because basically, we talk about how you discover your purpose, right? How do you find that thing that you was created to do and you do it passionately? We also talk about our relationship and how we join forces together to be what we call purpose pushers, right?
Yes.
Because that's what we do. We change, we make change, we utilize our purpose, and that drives us.
And you know, sometimes we say it all the time. You know, people get in relationships sometimes and it's trauma bonding. And I like to say that we power bond
Okay.
in our relationship. When we're at our best, we power bond and we create some phenomenal
And I hope y'all created that word in the book. Okay. Because people need to know how to power bond.
power bonding.
Power bonding.
Yes.
Y'all, listen, for all the updates for the change makers, as well as I Love Me More, and just what we're doing in the community, please make sure you join us at www.blackwomens'livesmatter.com. Guys, this was a crazy, crazy episode. Thank you so much for sitting in.
And there's so much more
hot
to
seat.
get with that. So I
Yeah.
wanted to introduce y'all to my partner, my life partner,
Mhm.
who I love.
Love you too.
Better put a ring on it though, babe.
Look at the book.
Don't do that. Okay? I want the big one with the stone.
Big one with the stone.
Okay. Anyway.
It's foreshadowing.
Anyway, y'all, you know we gotta pay some bills. And it's I Love Me More. And thank you, Angelo, for teaching me how to love myself.
Thank you both for having me. This was a great time.
Thank you for coming to our couch.
Let's pay these bills.
All right, y'all.
What's up, y'all? It's your girl, Dr. Jamila T. Davis, and I got a special offer for you, right? It's my gift from me to you. You want to level up? You want to manifest the life of your dreams? Well, I'm going to give you a piece of the plan, right? It starts with my Manifested Now vision plan. So follow me. It's actually the template that I use each and every year to get into my goals, my dreams. And unlike a vision board, I actually put this document on paper with goals and dreams and plans of who I want to be and what I want to become. And now you could do it too. It's time to level up, y'all. It's time to be the best you that you could possibly be. And I'm going to give you the plan. And best of all, I'm going to give it to you for free. Click the link right here. Download today and level up. Make sure you share the results with me. This is the exact plan that I've been doing for the last 4 years. And each and every year it's taking me higher and higher. And I pray it does the same for you.